Why am I doing a wrestling song for a sports show, especially when I'm about to talk about football? Anyway, welcome to Back and Forth Sports. Today, we're going to get right into it, not to steal Philip DeFranco's catchphrase or whatever opening phrase. National championship game played last night. Great game, unless you're a Georgia fan or really hate Bama. But the topic today, and it's probably been the topic for the last week ever since, or how long ago did UCF beat Auburn? Since they beat Auburn, it's been a topic. And is UCF, do you consider them the national champions? I mean, the easy answer is no, because they didn't win the national championship. But then you got to look at questions like, did they deserve to be in the playoffs? Honestly, I think they do, and I'll get to that later. For the people who say Bama proved they deserved to be in the playoffs, I'm going to disagree with that. And here's why. Just because you win the national championship, just because you win the playoffs, doesn't mean you deserve to be in the playoffs. Getting into playoffs isn't about how good you are. It's about what did you do. They didn't win their conference championship, so it's kind of weird that they get even a shot at a national championship when you prevent two other conference champions from getting into the playoffs, plus the best non-Power 5 team. But we didn't research who should have been in the playoffs. That would have been a show for earlier this last year, or late last year, after the regular season ended and all the conference championships have ended. So anyway, here's the argument for UCF being the national champions. I'll tell you right now, the Christian ranking system, the CRS as I like to call it, it's very simple. You win a game, you take the wins that team you beat have, put it in your points total. Your standings points are my ranking system points. You lose to a team, you take that team's losses, and you subtract that from your ranking points. Now, when I did the rankings, or came up with the points for these two teams, after the same amount of games, that would be after Alabama beat Clemson and UCF beat Auburn, UCF had more points. Alabama lost to a team with 4 losses. UCF lost to nobody. Now this is where there's a lot of similarities to their records. UCF beat 4 10-win teams, and they beat 8 teams with a winning record. Bama beat 2 teams with 9 wins, a team with 10, a team with 12, and a team with 13. But the 13-win team is Georgia, so if you're just counting the same amount of games played, you don't count that one. Which would mean, 4 10 wins versus a team with 2 9, a 10, and a 12. It kind of evens out. And Alabama also had 8 wins against winning teams. And that's out of 13 games. Of course, this is all post-bowl game records. This is why we didn't go back to playoffs and stuff. Now, what I have here is the top 3 reasons why UCF should have been national champions. Now, first that, yeah. So anyway, number 1, the obvious thing to point at, they had the better record. They're undefeated. Number 2, and UCF brought this up, they beat Auburn. Auburn beat Bama. And UCF doesn't have a loss, so you can't loop it around the other way. And here's one that hasn't been mentioned. Like I said, after the same amount of games, UCF had the better CRS ranking points. My ranking. Now, after Alabama beat Georgia, the CRS for them was 5 more points. So, if UCF were to go beat a team with 5 wins as their 14th game, I would say the two teams' seasons were equal. They go beat a team that's 500, and then I would, 6-6, or even 6-7, and UCF's season was better than Alabama's. Of course, you can go into that and say, oh, well, these 10-win teams they beat, how good were their wins? Like, who did they beat? Well, then you're getting pretty deep, and it's like, I don't know. You can probably get super deep. Like, how many wins did the team get against teams with wins that have wins against teams with wins against, and on and on and on, so forth. But Bama did have an extra game. So if you do include the fact they have that extra game, then Alabama, like if you were voting, yeah, Alabama deserves the national championship. But if you were voting before, I would have to say UCF. Anyway, what this year's situation does with college football, or this past season's year does with college football, is it makes the argument for an 8-team playoff. And this is how I would do it. You take all 5 power conference champions. Then you take the top-ranked non-power 5 team. That leaves 2 wild card spots. This year, if they did that, this year's playoffs would have been like this. First round would be number 1 seed Clemson versus number 8 seed UCF. And we're going off the college football playoff rankings, which had UCF number 12 overall. But they were the top non-power ranking, or non-power conference team. So you'd have Clemson number 1, the ACC champions, and they would have played UCF in the first round. Bama would have been the number 4 seed, and they would have played the number 5 seed Ohio State. The number 3 seed would have been Georgia, and number 6 seed would have been Wisconsin as a wild card. Oklahoma would have been the 2 seed, and they would have played Auburn in the first round, who would have been another wild card in the 7 seed. Looking at this, UCF might have beat Clemson. Bama probably would have beat Ohio State. Georgia probably would have beat Wisconsin. Oklahoma with Auburn, that might be a coin toss. Point being is, if we would have had these playoffs, UCF versus Alabama could have happened in the second round. But anyway, that's the show for today. That's what we're talking about. Feel free to hit up the Back to Brag Sports page on Facebook. Like this video, it's more just an audio podcast. Subscribe to this channel. Comment below what you think and what you want us to talk about in future episodes. We're going to try to be here every Tuesday. And maybe a few quote-unquote guerrilla shows. Like Wrestling Generations is going to have their show Guerrilla Press. Get it? It's a guerrilla show in their press. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Have a happy new year.